Hey everybody, I just wrote my first adventure, The Dark Cursed Dungeon of the Stabby Stabby Goblins. I need some players to test it out. I'm kinda new at DMing, so go easy on me. Who wants to play?
I'm Ignis. I want to burn things.
So you're a pyromancer?
I burn things. Goblins, elves, men, women, children, dogs, cats, fish.
Okay, I'll let you know. Next.
I'm Sarah. My character's supposed to be 18, but she's going to act like a hyperactive 12-year-old the entire time.
Next. My name is Andes. I'm a wizard possessed by a demon. I hate everyone else in the group, but I will still use them as my own personal dating service and get mooty if I'm rejected. Thank you. We'll be in touch. I'm Gale. I want to be the most powerful wizard in the world. That doesn't sound too bad. I've also got a nuclear bomb in place of my heart. Next!
I'm Karlok, and by a strange twist of fate, I too have a combustible device in my chest.
Is there anyone at all, playing a normal character? I'm Bill. I'm a fighter. I stab goblins for money if the cause is right. Can you work weekends? For time and a half? Sure. Sign here. It is hard these days for dungeon masters. A good chunk of the modern advice is to build your campaign at session 0, and then work your ideas into what the players make. It takes a lot to build a decent campaign. You must decide what your driving conflict will be, and then populate it with the various races you want, without flooding it too much with too many things to keep track of. You will be doing most of the designing and creating by yourself. Designing a campaign is a labor of love. You will be doing all the writing, designing, and imagining to make it enjoyable for other people.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
You will build the ecology, select which monsters are going to be put in it. Is it going to be high fantasy or low? Are you keeping with normal Earth animals for livestock and similar, or are you going to go with all fantasy versions? And once you've done that, you have to convince people to play your game. The hard part is that the right players can make your campaign hum. The wrong ones can kill it in a matter of weeks. Here's how to keep that from happening. Back in the grimdark darkness of the time before the internet, in the furthest corner of every single friendly local gaming store, there was a universal method of communications where dungeon masters could reach out and try to recruit players for the next big campaign. We called this device the bulletin board. It was usually made of cork, and if the store was indeed friendly, they would even supply index cards and thumbtacks to assist you in your quest. And if they were especially nice, they'd give you a pin. Space was limited on these index cards, so you had to communicate as much as you could in a very small space. Words were a commodity you could not afford to waste, especially since the last line was reserved for your phone number. But those few words could tell the players everything they needed to decide to commit to you or wait for the next index card. It was more than just telling people what game they were going to play. There were a lot of ways to play many of the games. Some of them had more than one setting. Some had a variety of styles to approach your campaign from. The more open a game was, the more options it had, and it made it harder to freestyle it without first putting in a lot of work regarding where to start. Rebel agents or tramp freighters? Camarilla or Sabat? Third Imperium or Dolinar's Rebellion? Krakow or Appalachia Milgov? Valhallan Ice Warriors or Mordian Iron Guard? Mystara or Faerun? Okay, that last one was a trick question. There's only one answer. If you're looking for players for a pre-built campaign, either of your own choosing or for a game with more than a few standard options, you need to pitch it to the players. If you already have an established gaming group, fantastic, because you'll have their input on at least part of it. You will already know what they like and can adjust accordingly. But what happens if you don't have a standard group or have to make up something for a group where the members will be a surprise? Conventions are the number one source of random players. You will need to work on your pitch so you don't have the wrong players show up to your game. If you're playing a horror game, you want to avoid people who don't like squick. If you're running a high-level game with established characters with a large number of abilities, you don't want a new player who doesn't understand the game involved because you will be re-explaining the rules while you're on the clock. Contrarily, if you're running the Perilous Pillow Palace of the Pesky Pixie designed to introduce people to your game, you're not looking for someone who bought his first module in 1984 at KB Toys in Corpus Christi because the veteran player isn't looking for introductory adventures and will be bored and or biting his tongue. Cork bulletin boards are a relic of the past for most stores. Everything is posted online for people to access for their homes, or they will at least have a dry erase board to schedule events. Nothing has changed in the game pitch, though. You need the following information on your game to attract the right players, obviously. What game are you playing? Are you using house rules, and if so, which ones? What is the maturity range of the game? Call of Cthulhu requires a much more adult mindset than Marvel superheroes. Is there an age limit? You don't want a table where everyone can imbibe adult beverages, but one. Where will the game be held? You can get away with a lot more in the privacy of your home than at a gaming store. but that store is going to have tables where your home might not. Plus, some people don't like to visit the homes of people they've just met or have strangers over to their house. What's expected of the players? If the game isn't an older established one, you might have to explain the rules to people who want to try it. Always read your game book thoroughly before trying to run a game. If this is your first time running this game because it just came out, try to sit in on any demo games that you can find beforehand. You have a little leeway if it's a super duper brand new RPG because nobody will have played it. If you're running D&D and you have 6 grognards at the table, they will expect you to be at least familiar with the rules. Once you've established the baseline requirements for your players, then and only then go into the actual details of your game. If you are running a game with a lot of supplements that has a large variety of suggested playstyles, clearly state which options you are running. Star Wars, for example, started everybody as rebel agents, then added a book that let them play as freelancers with tramp freighters. Then you could play Imperials with suggestions on how to run that campaign. Then it moved on to swashbuckling space nobility with Lords of the Expanse. And finally, Pirates and Privateers with the book of the same name. 5 different playstyles in the same game, most of which are mutually exclusive. You aren't playing space aliens if you're a member of the Galactic Empire. Smugglers are a little bit more open-minded in their moral stance than rebel agents. If you're playing World of Darkness, some player choices exclude others. There's not enough room in a campaign for a follower of Set and a Shimsu Heru, unless they are playing very much out of character. The technocracy might tolerate tradition mages, but other supernatural creatures will have a bad time with them. When you have mutually exclusive choices like this, decide before you even talk to potential players to stop any in-game conflicts before they start. When you pitch your players the campaign, if they want to deviate from the ideas, at least hear them out. Their idea might be a good one. If you have built a campaign, and the player races are restricted to Sleestaks, Doozers, Wheelers, Sectars, Oompa Loompas, and clones of Mac from Night Court, that might be enough for everyone, but one guy might have his heart set on playing a preteen robot girl with a sincere desire to kick evil's butt. This might get disruptive if he's doing it because he just wants to act like a preteen robot girl in and out of character. If he wants to play her because he's still pumped from the epic final episode of Mighty Orbots and thinks that adding the character will add to the sheer awesomeness of your game, they would be correct, though you might have to rewrite some stuff. Keep an open mind, but don't waver if their suggestion would be disruptive or outside the scope. They can want to play a sparkly love-struck vampire all they want, but the rest of the group is trying to liberate post-nuclear Krakow. The sun might be a problem. Screen out players that wouldn't be a good fit for your game. Their personality might not be a problem, but many times, their schedule is. I'll get to that in a bit. If the game attracts people of a certain age or experience, somebody who doesn't share those traits might feel left out. My G.I. Joe game was made up entirely of military veterans. Their comments reflected this with a lot of inside jokes. They weren't unwelcoming or anything like that, but if you weren't a military veteran, you would feel very isolated. Plus, you wouldn't get any of the jokes. So when the G.I. Joe Bayonet Specialist Pig Sticker comes back from a rather combat-heavy mission and is rewarded with the Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Public Health Service Award, and an honorable DD-214 under Chapter 513, everyone is going to be falling out of their chair laughing except for the one person that isn't part of that culture. This can be especially true for games with a rich history that players need to be familiar with to comprehend how to play fully. Warhammer 40k comes to mind. You need to get new players up to speed first before throwing them into a situation over their head, the RPG equivalent of explaining the rules of cricket before the first over is bowled. The trick to screening people is to be as clear as possible when posting your announcement. Conventions are on a timer. You need people to come in and be ready to play the minute your slot starts. If you're not running a starter adventure, you need people familiar with the game. This is where you use terms people experienced with the game will understand. It's the gaming equivalent of saying you need a particular certification for a job interview. Which optional rules will be applied or what commonly used abilities aren't in your game will alert people looking for something particular if yours is the one they want to play in. Set your age limits, let people know if your game will have adult themes, and if prior experience is required. You don't need to add many unspoken rules because experienced players should know them, the ones that you would normally need to tell new players face to face. Things like, your game isn't a dating service, so don't try to hook up at the table while you're playing. Unless you have decided to run a vampire LARP.
You have? Fuck your brains out, kids.
So who are the players that might not be a good fit for your game, and how do you let them down easily? There's quite a few varieties, and for different reasons. Some of the people might be great for one campaign, but not another. This is on a case-by-case basis. But the point is to create the best campaign with the available people. If you've got a limited selection of players, you play with what you've got. There's a shortage of dungeon masters right now, so you are the commodity. Don't be too selective or you'll alienate people. But if you bring in people that aren't going to enjoy themselves, your game will suffer. It's a fine line, but you must walk it for the most enjoyment. First up is the part-timer. This player can't commit to being there on every session. There are many reasons, with fluid work schedules or kids being the top ones. They want to play. They will throw themselves into every game and ensure that it stays on track because they only get so much gaming free time and they don't want to waste a second. But they will find themselves working late one day. Maybe their daughter has a swim meet that night. An oil rig in Odessa might break a vital belt, and they happen to be the only person that can drive from Houston to Rocheron to Odessa to get the only available spare part in 500 miles because every hour that rig is down, it costs the company tens of thousands of dollars. In any case, they are a perpetual maybe if you ask when they can play. They aren't going to be a good fit for a serialized game where they need to be there for the plot, the party balance is tenuous, or if they miss a game it can endanger the party. They're looking for episodic games where the adventure is done in one night. Superhero, comedy, or military games would be a better fit for them. Raw dogs are the read-as-written sticklers. They aren't necessarily rules lawyers, but they believe strongly if it's in the book, it's in the game. They stifle under any house rule that would restrict their character. If they're playing Dragonlance, they want to play a drow. God help you if you tell them you aren't using feats. They tend to only play one type of character. If that option isn't available, they will demand that it is available because there are rules for it. This can end very badly when they want to make a character that absolutely will die at the hands of the rest of the party. The Tiefling in a Knights of Ebony campaign. The Mon Calamari in an Imperial game. The Dark Eldar Reaver will explode in a hail of bolter fire from the rest of the Deathwatch squad.
Not me. I'm not going to shoot him.
Except you, Decapitatius. The Raw Dog wants to play a particular character. If that character is in your game, they will have fun. If not, they will complain the entire time. Patient Zero is looking for social contact. They are looking for it in a game, but they want the attention and conversation more than the game itself. Some of them are looking for therapy and decided that a hobby that involves 50% violence is the best place for it. Granted, if they've had a bad day at work and want to slaughter termagants in a Deathwatch game, that should be fine. But if all they want to do is use their character as a proxy to talk about their insecurities, you're a dungeon master, not a psychologist. You can be their friend. You can let them play out their fantasies. But if they need actual help, the gaming table is not the right place for it. It's not fair to put you on the spot, and it's not fair to the other players. Then you've got the Cannoneer, the player that is all in on the setting you're playing. They will spout obscure facts and try to create characters that, while keeping to your restrictions, will cause problems later down the road. They will have advanced knowledge of the setting, while not meta-knowledge will slow the game down. They will know that Bantha Trax is the most popular bar on the planet Liana because it was in a book or a cartoon you've never seen. They will buy common gear that's in supplemental guides you don't have. You need to rein them in because you don't want to improvise every encounter with somebody who knows the setting far more than you. They're some of the easier ones to fix just by telling them the restrictions on the campaign beforehand. Just throw them a bone and let them deep dive into the lore at least once a game. Then we come to the loner, Dottie, the rebel. These players often started with one-on-one play because their first RPGs were either on the computer or they just had smaller game groups. They aren't used to being around other players. They don't interact too much with anyone but you. If you have an established group that needs new players for whatever reason, they're not going to have a lot of fun. Many of them are there to enjoy themselves vicariously watching the other players. They are having a blast, but they aren't going to be the ones initiating any of the action. They are the wallflowers. They pay attention to the game. They want to be there. They just don't want to be the center of attention. How you handle the loner can be tricky because they can't be confused with people tagging along with someone else. If they enjoy themselves and nobody has a problem, there's no problem. They might be using you for their version of a live-action Critical Role, but take that as a compliment. There's a reason a lot of people prefer plays to movies. If they aren't being entertained, they will leave the game organically. The trickiest to work with has to be the unaccompanied minor. I'm not talking about hosting random kids in your house for your game. That's a definite no-no. That's when you call their parents. I'm talking about running your Call of Cthulhu module, the Sadomistic Slaughterhouse of the Somme, and a 12-year-old wants to play. Or when your daughter brings over her 3 school friends and wants to learn how to play an RPG. Kids change things significantly. If your game is a hard R, then you need to inform them there's an age limit. If it's not a pre-written module, you need to find something age-appropriate. More importantly, make sure that the kid's supposed to be there. Ensure their parents know that they are at your game to avoid any implications. Almost all the time, you will already have some connection with your underage player. Either from the game store or you have a family connection. Still, if you let them in your game, make sure everything is above board. Everybody else in the game is on their best behavior. That means no sneaking them a beer. You are their DM, not their cool aunt or uncle. Then we get to Decapitatus. I'll let him explain.
Do you know what the best thing to look forward to after a hard day of purging Xenos? Coming home to your RPG group and purging Xenos with your imagination. The only stat I care about is body count. I'm here for combat, and every other pillar of game design can burn. I will supply the Prometheum. I'm not chaotic angry. I know not to ruin the game for everyone else by randomly attacking every NPC we encounter. But if the party has to talk to the king, I'll be in his basement killing rats. My character will be min-maxed for combat to the extreme. When I'm not rolling to hit, I'm botching my fellowship tests. I'm an excellent fit for combat-intensive RPGs like Street Fighter, Deathwatch, or My Little Pony. But if you're playing a slow-burn political game like Vampire or more exploration-focused like Space 1889, I'm not a good fit for your table.
The entire point is, you're the Dungeon Master. You are tasked with creating enjoyable adventures in a setting people would want to play in. But you must get the right players to make the game the best you can. You're going to be building a world or adventure geared towards your friends. That's inevitable. With any luck, you started as a player and decided to sit behind the screen finally. But for many first-time DMs, you need new players. That's when you need to pitch your game to potential players. That's why who you allow in your game is essential. Getting a veteran player to sit in is a good decision if they know you're a rookie. They can help you with the often cumbersome rules. Eventually you will stand on your own. That's when you break from the modules and write your own. Remember, it's still a cooperative game, but you have a different job from the players. Don't let the pressure get to you. Just like designing your game and only including the rules that are a good fit, only recruit players who enjoy the game. The most crucial part is everyone have fun. That includes you.